Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today I'm beyond thrilled to talk to Margot Douaihy about Blessed Water. Welcome, Margot.
It is so wonderful to be back in the Dan studio talking about mysteries in life and religion and faith and everything. Thanks so much for having me back.
Oh, it is my pleasure. To give a little setup, so your first book was Scorched Grace, and you won several awards and accolades for it, including debut author from Saints and Sinners Literary Festival and from Left Coast Crime, and you were named Best Author by Boston Magazine. I mean, you came out of the gate swinging hard.
I think I was just falling in the right spaces, just flailing all over the place and just landing in some great corners. And like when you do trust fall at camp and you just fall back. That's my advice. Just know who to trust fall around.
You are absolutely right about that. You're absolutely right about that. So give us a little overview about what Blessed Water is about.
So, excuse my voice, I'm a little froggy with allergies. In New England is a constant presence in our lives. So hopefully I'll be coming in clear through our video waves and airwaves. So I want each book in this quartet to have its own rhythm, its own tempo, but really reliably give you this world. That I love world building. I love characters. So the series is character driven by an iconoclastic, somewhat rebellious, very unpredictable, very genuine and devout Catholic sister. She's in the novitiate. She has not taken her permanent vows yet. But so Scorched Grace is really this journey of incineration and fire and passion and burning. And we understand how and why this unusual 33-year-old former punk rocker, lesbian AF, kind of rabble-rouser finds herself in this convent in New Orleans and is a genuine believer despite the optics. So I wanted Blessed Water to keep continuing this journey of character, seeing a character as she grapples with the materiality of her choices and her obsession with sleuthing, and how sleuthing and religious fervor can sometimes be very much aligned, as well as her sort of punk aesthetic within the confines of this religiosity and the uniform of it. So I wanted Blessed Water to have its tempo be almost like that, kind of 3-chord punk anthem, very quick, a rapidity that feels both, kind of steady, but has its crescendos. So it's a 3-act structure. It takes place on a Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Sunday. And it starts with Sister Holiday basically pulling the dead body of a mutilated priest out of the Mississippi River and takes off from there. So I wanted the structure of it almost to mirror, kind of the deceptive finite frame of an aspect of life or an era of life, but really just pack it with lots of ups and downs and sideways turns and really trying to unmask the murderer. And kidnapping ensues, a mysterious figure shows up, questions of the past still continue to haunt this character, and we see folks really humanly asking questions about who I am, what does this all mean, and why.
Sister Holiday is so nurturing in so many ways to other people. And yet I think in her mind, she has all these questions about herself and her faith. She doesn't question her faith. She knows it's there, but she has these questions that keep coming up, sort of, maybe I say, tug at her faith. And that's something that you do so well. It's like pulling that little string along, to see how it unravels, because every mystery story unravels at some point because we come to a conclusion. One of the other things is I love the fact that you get elements and you get environment. So I think because the book is set in New Orleans, I think I can say unequivocally, of all the places I've traveled, I've never seen it rain so hard as it does in New Orleans.
Yes.
And you picked up on that. That figures it right into this. So describe a little bit about the weekend and the weather situation.
Well, thank you for saying that. And yeah, I did want to explore that contained experience of a storm because it has a cycle. There's a storm cycle, just like there's a beginning, middle, and an end, but it might not feel like it's in that order. So when I had the incredible good fortune to live in the Crescent City, I was there for 2 years, and I felt like it invented the weather. I swear I had not felt
Yes.
heat, rain, wind, and it was hurricane, or not Hurricane Ivan, but Tropical Storm Ivan. To me, it felt like it was existential and mortal terror, but everybody was like, it's fine, because it's all relative. So I
Yes.
knew for Blessed Water, I wanted to explore the power of rain to break a drought or kind of break the heat, but before that to undo and dismantle and unmake and drown and give the threat of drowning and swallowing.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of those elements mirror what the character is going through. Tears, I have her crying quite a bit. Other characters, her brother, when I won't give too much away, they share this kind of crying. And to me, that really mirrors the rain. And so, we can think all we want about magic and is it real, but like to me, nature is magic. And
Absolutely.
there's like water falling from the sky. That's crazy. And it feels like religious epiphany. So all that's why I wanted to explore this extraordinary city that's constantly under threat, but is quite resilient in the most creative and unexpected ways.
It is as if no matter what you throw at it or how hard it is hit, it is resilient and it will bounce back in one way or another. It may change forms and shift because that's what things do. It's a lot like the Mississippi River that runs one direction, but it meanders sort of all over the place. It's hard to contain. It's hard to contain water anyway. And I think that as humans, we always try to contain something, whether it's an element or whatever, but yet water, it seeks its own and it will find its way out. It's hard to contain water. And I think that was something that I saw, in the characters. They wanted to grip onto something, but water is not something you can grip onto. It's not a rock. It's not sand. You put water in your hands, it runs through your fingers. And I think that was so borne out in this book that, it's not something we can contain. We also can't always contain our emotions.
No. And these are just beautifully observed qualities, Dan. And I love hearing you talk about it because it's making me think, so in so many new ways as well. I'm just going to bring a quote. I'll probably not get it right. Alice Walker says something to the tune of, water has a perfect memory, so that we can, in our human hubris, carve it out and build cities and everything, but the water will go back to its original state in so many ways. And I was very fascinated by that. And I was reading a lot about, kind of religious explorations of water too. And so that's the prologue, which is really from 3/4 way into the novel, where she's talking about swallowing this rosary bead and kind of having it inside of her body, which is like fluid, kind of like fluid night. And the way we sort of all start our lives in swimming, in water, in the kind of trust that asks of us. Really beautiful, incredibly fragile, but also very strong. So all of that is deeply interesting to me, and I'm somewhat obsessed with it. So like just finding a frame to put it into a mystery and letting some of those other little mysteries, kind of the understory, bubble up, for lack of a better word. Be part of that reading experience with the reader as you're kind of in the swell of it, trying to hang on with these characters, and they're all struggling in different ways.
And I think that so mirrors life, because we all have our own struggles. We all have our own aspirations, our own goals, our own successes and failures at the same time. I think humans are always trying to control something, and whether it's change the narrative or, control other people or control the story that we put out there. And what we find is that's not a possibility. So it too is like the water. It will find its own, given a chance anyway.
Oh, most definitely. And, there's a very remarkable sector, I guess you'd say, of noir called eco-noir and eco-crime. And some Ross MacDonald books, Attica Locke, Blackwater Rising. A lot of mystery writers, I think, are asking questions about how our environment is part of almost the state crime, what we're doing to Mother Earth, etc. It works out in different ways. And I think that's also the glory of being a genre writer, too. As mystery writers, we can really take on some of these huge questions as long as we root them and anchor them in compulsively readable, kind of consumptive characters, in my opinion.
I agree.
Megan Abbott, for example, just how she explores gender, and in her kind of domestic noirs or cheerleading noir of Dare Me or Beware the Woman, with the polemics around choice, pro-choice or abortion rights, etc. We could take these things on, so I
absolutely
want to give another nod to this incredible community of mystery and thriller writers that I'm very happy to be part of.
Yes, and I think we have an opportunity to share some positive thoughts, or maybe even lead a conversation, as long as our characters are true. As long as you're not hitting someone over the head with a hammer. I mean, you can do that in a mystery novel, but I mean, if you can't hit the reader over the head. So you just have to sort of like lead the horse to water.
Yeah, I don't want to be chloroformed by some boring pontification, 12-page geyser of a sermon, for lack of a better word.
Right.
Almost that it's like, as you're talking about, like the water, how you can't quite hold it, that these kind of themes can be slippery and invisible, but utterly inextricably linked to the fate of the characters, to their stakes, to the rising action, to the kind of cascade of problems and conflicts. Yeah, I don't want to be preached at, but I do love a book with something big to say. S.A. Cosby's books come to mind. Gillian Flynn's, Dark Places, which kind of tackles urban poverty in Kansas. You're like, they're rippers,
right?
But oh my God, they can change the way you look, the way you think about an issue.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's what the best authors do. They give us a setup, and then they deliver it. They deliver the news to us without choking us with it. So, so let's talk a little bit about why you chose a nun. I do know some of this because I have met you in person. I've seen you at conferences and stuff. But give the audience an overview of where the seed was germinated to give us a nun in Sister Holiday.
I did go to Catholic school for more than 8 years. I'm trying to remember if I hadn't, worked with nuns when I was in like preschool or something. But so I grew up in a very Catholic part of Scranton. My family is Maronite Catholic, which is the Catholic denomination of the Catholicism from Lebanon, Syria, Palestine. So it's hugely important to my family, to my life, to my identity. Very proud of it in many ways. But so Catholic school gave me an opportunity to know nuns. They were my teachers. They were the principals. They set a kind of moral stage as well as a way to think about life. And they were, may I curse on this show?
Yeah, yes, you can say whatever you want.
They were pretty badass. They were tough. They were tough ladies. They prefigured feminism as I understood it when I was like 6 or 7 or 8, because they were very much self-determined, living on their own. They had taken vows of poverty, obedience, celibacy, and I was just kind of amazed by them, and also somewhat sometimes scared of them, but they were sort of very mysterious to me. Who were they? What were they really like? So, I took piano lessons in the convent, and I would just sort of look around, and, it was from a very early age, I thought the Order of the Sisters of Immaculate Heart of Mary were extremely literate, super smart, and lived in this way that was very purpose-driven and duty-bound, in many ways very radical. As radical as one might be if you lived on a hippie commune. And
absolutely.
So the Venn diagram overlaps with almost like radical leftist feminism and even lesbian separatism and Catholic nuns. And yet, the doctrinal fidelity might get in the way if we're talking about abortion or we're talking about queer identities or trans rights. So all of that, I was like, okay, if I want to write a hard-boiled sleuth, who better than a nun? And that really, you know, my love of the hard-boiled kind of wisecracking, tough on the outside, tough on
Tender
the
on the inside.
yeah, so that interested me very greatly, and I thought, okay, let's do a hard-boiled nun sleuth.
Well, now, if you're in a habit, you really cannot blend into the crowd. However, I think that your choice of a nun is so wonderful in the fact that I think a nun can blend into the human race, not necessarily visibly, but the human heart race. And I think, like, even say, like with a priest, you know, there's a bit of people actually want to tell a nun or a minister sometimes their deepest secrets. We just are naturally drawn to doing that. It's like talking to a bartender. You're going to tell them more than they probably ever wanted to know, but it is just, there are a group of people that happens with, you know. And I think the fact that Sister Holiday is a nun gives her a leg up on some things that it would not give a leg up to other people, maybe.
Absolutely. And in many ways, that's part of what she grapples with. I think that, you know, in Blessed Water, there's a very, very unexpected baptism scene. And I kind of wanted to dial into that DIY aesthetic that, you know, if you've ever gone to a punk show or a rave or a club and you're like, somebody's flailing and needing help and you hold their hair back as they throw up. That to me is like kind of the best of ministry, human to human. You're a stranger or whatever, but like, I see you. And I think nuns and priests can do that. And sometimes it's, you know, corrupted. And we see the fallout from that. But, you know, it's a beautiful, beautiful calling. You know, priests are called for the last rites. Priests say, I do, to people who want to start a new life together. Nuns, not so much. And so I wanted to explore that too. Hierarchy.
Yes, and I'm glad because you bring up a point that is it's very personal to me because I'm a huge feminist. To me, every human on this earth got here through a woman. So a woman should always be first. I mean, it's just the way it works in this world. That's the way it should work. But we also know that with patriarchy, that often does not happen. And I think sometimes people will say, you know, well, the priest is the top, you know, the top notch, and then comes the nuns or whatever. But, you know, if you think about what nuns do in church, they really should be at the top because they're the ones who actually minister on a daily basis to people. So I do appreciate you bringing that in because you also give us a character who is not, because she is a badass, she's not that kind of person who is subservient. Sister Holiday has a mind of her own, and she's not, I don't necessarily say that she steps out of line. Maybe she does, but the thing is, I would say that she has her own mind, and it is something that she's chosen to do. It's not something that someone has forced her to do. She specifically chose this field.
Yeah, and some might look upon that, you know, her friends, for example, in Brooklyn, they're like, it's a super regressive, countercultural choice. Why would you choose to kind of muzzle yourself in a way? But it's again, a personal choice. And yeah, I think when I think of Sister Helen Prejean, you know, her famous kind of Dead Man Walking, and Sister Simone Campbell, and so many extraordinary radical nuns, the Jane Network, and on and on and on. And so part of this book is in this series is also to kind of counter their erasure in terms of, like, let's just say it, the Pope, who literally a couple of weeks ago, when he thought he was in the privacy of whatever, uses a slur against gay men that starts with the letter F. The Pope, the Holy See. So we have a lot of work to do. So it's the leader of this, you know, he's a real change maker, and he's calling my brothers, my gay family, like this slur again. No way. And so it's like, okay, I got more fodder right here.
See,
For my family, you know,
that's
who
it. That's it.
believe deeply and love this institution. Can't we evolve as a community, as believers? You know, my hope is, yeah, I'm a stubborn optimist, so I'm going to push it up wherever I can.
I totally agree with you. And, you know, so that's a great thing about being a creative. So when the Pope missteps like that, he just gives you, as you say, fodder for something in the future. So it's like, okay, keep it up. Just keep bringing me ideas. Try to change, but bring me more ideas. So, you know, and I look forward to the day, Margot, that you could write a book and brag about how far the change has come. So that is, I'm like you, I'm an optimist. That is my goal, that eventually we're able to say, okay, we can lay down our swords and our knives now because we've all kumbaya. We've actually come together. That's my hope. I think we still have a little ways to go, but I'm still hopeful.
Me too. Me too.
So I do want to point out, and I won't go into detail, but I'm just going to tease the audience. You will see Margot's humor in reading Blessed Water in the baptism scene in his outfit. I will tell you, I laughed so hard. I'm like, oh my goodness. Margot just puts in just a bit of her humor, just slides it right in. So perfectly well done. I love it.
These little details make us who we are.
Absolutely.
You know, the person who does that weird thing before a big meeting, or, you know, these little details, I love when I read them and they stay with me forever. The kind of weirdest little details. So whenever I can kind of find just a tiny moment to show character showing, I love telling. I'm a big teller and shower, but just that.
Just a little something.
Yes.
Because it does, you know, we humans who are sighted, we see the most extraordinary things that maybe you and I sit next to each other and we watch a movie and I see one thing and you see something different. You know, that's a great thing about humanity. But as an author, when you get a chance to slide in those fun little details, it's always so fun to read them.
I love that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I know this is out. You've had Scorched Grace and now Blessed Water. What are you working on next?
Divine Ruin is the third installment in the series. It is deep noir. Let's just throw out Garden of Edens. Just, you know, we got some snakes and viper-like activity going on. That will be out January 2026. That will be the third book.
All right. Yes. I absolutely love it. So, Margot, do you have a website or social media you'd like to share?
Yes, my website, which is somewhat static, but still a place to see tour dates and kind of some news in the community. That is just my name, which I'll spell out for anyone listening, MargotDouaihy.com. And on Insta, Neon Margot, for my great love of neon. And that's really it. I'm on, you know, other platforms, but I check Instagram once a week. So send me a note. Let's connect.
Perfect. I love it. Once again, the book is Blessed Water. It's by Margot Douaihy. Margot, thank you so much for joining me. This was so fun.
An absolute pleasure. I loved spending time with you, Dan, and I love your mind as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at outwithdan.com, on Twitter at outwithdan, and on Instagram and Facebook at GoOutWithDan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.